In the murky world of crime and justice, sometimes the most unlikely heroes emerge. Among the smoke and mirrors of criminal enterprises, there are those who have turned from the dark side to shed light on the very underworld they once thrived in. These are the tales of criminals turned crime solvers, where the protagonists are not always on the right side of the law, but their insight proves invaluable in cracking some of the toughest cases. Want to know how to think like a criminal? Then keep on watching for 4 hardened criminals that help the police crack the toughest cases. Number 4. Enter Frank Abagnale.
My name is Frank William Abagnale.
Back 50 years ago, there were con men, and that stood for confidence man. They were well-dressed, they had a great vocabulary, they were a very likable person, and that's how they swindled you. But they had to do that one-on-one. They had to be standing in front of you.
You're one of the greatest con men of all time. You're the daddy of them all.
Made famous by Leonardo DiCaprio's 2007 portrayal in the Steven Spielberg-directed film Catch Me If You Can.
Most people know me from the movie Catch Me If You Can. You know, between 16 and 21, I impersonated an airline pilot, a doctor, a lawyer. I wrote $2.5 million worth of bad checks.
Abagnale's exploits in forging checks and assuming false identities made him millions at the age of 21. From the ages of 16 to 21, it is believed that Abagnale impersonated a lawyer, a Pan Am pilot to score free flights, and even masqueraded as a medical doctor.
I got the uniform and I walked up to a ticket counter one day and the girl said to me, "Are you flying or are you paying or riding?" And I said, "What do you mean? Are you riding the jump seat or are you going to buy the ticket?" I said, "Well, no, I'll ride the jump seat." And then I realized I could fly all over the world for free.
It was, however, in the check forgery department that Abagnale became the expert, which was ultimately what landed him in jail for 12 years. Of course, in typical Abagnale fashion, he eventually escaped, but was soon returned to serve out the 4 remaining years of his sentence. In exchange for a shortened sentence, Abagnale agreed to help the federal government without remuneration.
I was arrested when I was 21 years old. When I was 26 years old, the government offered to take me out of prison on the condition I go to work with an agency of the federal government for the remainder of my sentence. I agreed. I've been working with the FBI now.
By guiding law enforcement agencies, and has been involved with the FBI for over 35 years. But it wasn't just his knack for deception that caught the attention of authorities. It was his unparalleled understanding of the criminal mind. From a life of crime to a consultant for the FBI, Abagnale's biographical book reads like a thriller, where the hunter becomes the hunted, and redemption is found in the pursuit of justice. He is still considered one of the foremost authorities in securities and check fraud. Then there's Frank Lucas, at number 3, the heroin kingpin of the 1970s, whose audacious smuggling schemes rivaled the most elaborate heists of fiction.
President Nixon coined the term the war on drugs.
America's public enemy number 1 in the United States is drug abuse.
It was horrible.
Immortalized by Denzel Washington on the silver screen, Lucas's rise to infamy was matched only by his fall from grace. Not just everyone can go head-to-head with the mob and come out on top, especially not against a drug ring.
It was terrible. You go to the schoolyards and you find needles full of stuff. You would see emaciated people who obviously were addicted to drugs, staggering around, lying on the streets. You'd find needles all over the place.
But Lucas found a way, making $1 million a day from the trade.
I was driven by a desire to punish narcotics violators who were making a lot of money while destroying the city. The DEA people were standing right alongside of me. Everybody was motivated by that, to do their jobs and to remove these people from the city, put them in prison.
Cleverly using the coffins of lifeless soldiers returning from the Vietnamese issue to smuggle drugs into the United States to sell them on the streets. Ultimately, he was busted and sentenced to 70 years in jail.
He sat down, turned around and looked at me. And I turned around and looked at him. And I'm thinking, he's thinking, look at this little piece of third who's trying to get me convicted, and I'm thinking, yeah, it's me, and I'm going to convict you. Finally got the SOB in court, ready to go to trial.
But in a twist worthy of a Hollywood script, Lucas turned informant, shining a light on the dark underbelly of corruption within law enforcement itself.
He said to me, I never thought about it that way, something like that. I mean, that's how emotional it was. I never thought about it that way. And I said, well, that's the way it was. That's the way it is. You're telling me this because you want to plead guilty, you want to end this? He said, no. He says, I don't know what's going to happen, but if I'm found guilty, I'll get a hold of you.
Within the Special Investigations Unit of the NYPD, 52 out of the 70 members of the SIU were eventually jailed or indicted. His collaboration with authorities not only brought down his empire, but exposed the rot within the system, proving that even in the depths of depravity, redemption can be found.
Guilty, Your Honor.
Oh my God. I can't even describe it. It's just like the weight of the world came off my shoulders. Just pure happiness. When I looked at Frank, I looked at him right away. He looked at Larry Dubin, his attorney, and I didn't see anger. You know, I thought I would, but he looked hurt, like, how could you do this to me?
And who could forget Kevin Mitnick at number 2 on this list?
Characterize myself as a little bit of having a similar story like the Frank Abagnale Catch Me If You Can. Is when I was younger, I was really fascinated with telephones, computers, and magic, and I became a hacker. Not a hacker for profit like we see today, but more a hacker for intellectual curiosity.
The cyber criminal whose name struck fear into the hearts of tech giants. Everything from hacking, circumventing cybersecurity, and stealing computer codes from companies.
Kevin Mitnick was probably the world's most notorious cyber thief.
Crimes that cost companies like Nokia, Sun Microsystems, and Motorola approximately $300 million, crimes for which he spent nearly 5 years in jail. From hacking into corporate systems to facing down the U.S. Senate, Mitnick's journey from outlaw to cybersecurity expert is a testament to the power of second chances.
Just tons and tons of camaraderie and teamwork and working together to find solutions.
The excitement is what I remember the most. The excitement of being at the top or very close to the top, the excitement of new products, new services.
I'm part of it, and that makes me proud.
Instead of exploiting vulnerabilities, he now works to fortify them, having started a consultancy firm, using his once illicit skills to safeguard the very systems he once sought to breach.
I saw myself as an electronic joyrider having a great time on the information superhighway. I felt like I was like James Bond behind the computer. It was a big game to me. I was just having a blast.
But perhaps the most intriguing figure of all is Joseph Valachi at number 1.
Edge of the table was a long table, and there was a gun and a knife on the table.
The first man in history who dared to speak the name of the unspoken, unveiling the secrets of the Cosa Nostra to a world ignorant of its existence. The first member of the notorious crew of Salvatore Maranzano, before joining the Genovese crime family. There, he became a crucial part of their operations and had an in-depth knowledge of insider secrets.
Within the mafia organizational structure, there are family bosses, and then beneath them there are underbosses. Despite the fact that in the 1950s, Valachi had been in the mafia for over 20 years, he was still just a button man in a crew. He hadn't risen very far.
A ruthless slayer and leg breaker, Valachi was locked up for a drug charge, spending 15 to 20 years in jail, a time that made him reconsider his life choices. After getting on the wrong side of Genovese and beating to lifelessness a man he wrongfully thought was there to assassinate him, Valachi turned state witness. Valachi informed the terms we now commonly associate with the mafia, such as the Italian term Cosa Nostra, meaning our thing, or the demise kiss, which he received from his mob, sealing his fate.
Joe recognized immediately the kiss of death. For no reason, he bestowed a bus on his cheek. And Joe knew what this meant. It meant he was now going to be killed.
From enforcer to informant, Valachi's decision to break the Omerta Code shattered the mystique of organized crime, laying bare its inner workings for all to see. In his defiance, he not only sealed his fate, but paved the way for law enforcement to dismantle the very empire he once served.
Valachi was a rat. It was the first time anyone could pull back the curtain or paint the canvas of what it was like.
I think what Valachi did was explain what the FBI had and didn't know they had. And so the FBI had tapes, they had relationships between individuals, they had terms, they had words in both English and Italian that they didn't understand. And Valachi was able to make sense out of all of that.
Signing off for now. Tune in next time for another riveting episode.